Everyone. I'm going to take the time to make this presentation about how aircrafts flying on a ball is pretty crazy. We have a few people who have already made some diagrams, and I'm just going to come in here and show how these diagrams match and how it is practically impossible to have it be a ball. Now, I'm going to use AutoCAD again, and everybody's going to be able to follow through with this because it's a program and I do everything live. Now, a lot of people say that I'm using PowerPoint and it's a presentation, and that is completely not true. Please learn the difference between a PowerPoint presentation and a live recording. This is a live recording. You can even see the minutes. The minutes move up. It just moved up right now. Now, let's go over here and back to the Earth radius, verifying that with Google and NASA information that it is 3,959 miles. So let's go over here and make an Earth with the radius 3959. Zoom out because the thing is pretty huge. There we go. Took a while. Now, what I'm also going to do is I'm going to come over here to the Australian government with the atmosphere theme report. I am going to look at what they have here for data, because where the exosphere starts and the thermosphere ends really depends on who's making the diagram. So it changes, from 550 kilometers to 500. There's various they don't have any kind of actual agreement on what it is. They just put it on there, and I'm going to use this because it is on a government website. Now, I'm going to convert these in order to get the ozone layer's distance from the thermosphere to the exosphere. I'm going to take my calculator and I'm going to put in, I was working on something else, hold on. That's 500 kilometers, and in miles that's 310 miles. 300.7, let's just do 311 miles. Now, in order to show that here, I'm going to make another circle. Oops. With the radius of, let's take the calculator here, 3959 plus 311 miles. So it'll be 4270. 4270. That represents this line here. I'm going to change the color of this one first. Change it to blue. Cyan to represent the ball Earth. And this one I'm going to change to, I don't know, yellow. Let's just do yellow. And to verify that, we have the 500. This represents the ground to the end of the thermosphere. Now, another thing that I want to take into account is another aircraft vessel that is up there is the International Space Station. We can put this in there too to get an idea of how high that is up there. And I'm going to take 3,949 miles plus that to get the 59 miles, sorry about that, to get the distance. Whoops, gotta get the calculator first. Plus, and to verify, 249, about 250 miles. 4208. Now you can see that is not above the thermosphere here. It's about this area here. It's still within the thermosphere. Now I'm going to change this red. the flight path of the ISS is red. Now, one of the things that I want to do is show a plane flying at an altitude of 35,000 feet is what it's gonna look like. So let's start plotting this thing. Go to the intersection, and then we're gonna take the feet, oops, there it is, and we're gonna convert it to miles. I already know by the top of my head, but gotta put it here for people. So 35,000 feet is about 6.6 miles. So we're just going to round that down to 6.6 miles. 6.6. Okay. Now you can see from that little line there that represents an aircraft at that altitude, and it's very far away from that. Now I'm going to plot a distance of a flight trip that goes on constantly and daily from San Diego to Miami. And if you see here, the distance that I measured is about 2,260 miles from San Diego to Miami. Now I'm just going to round that down a little bit just to keep things a little bit simple. I'm going to use only 2,250, which is, of course, not accurate, but it is still less a little bit, about 16 miles. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the direction of this flight, which would be here, in a straight line, because aircraft do fly level. Now that's 2,250 miles. And you can see there that an aircraft flying a straight mile in a flight trip that will be about a good 3 hours, 4 hours at most, is going to go straight into space. Now let me just plot this a little bit more here. Let's get the distance of the flight per hour. We're going to give this aircraft a velocity at 500 miles an hour. Now here's the line to start plotting this thing. We're going to go in that direction, 500 miles, then another 500 miles, then another 500 miles, then another, and then another. Okay, you can see that it definitely is not going to be that many hours, and we can see that from the diagram here. Now I'm going to start making some lines to make intersections of how much curvature drop, if indeed the Earth was a ball, we would have to compensate for on this flight trip. And you can see here that after 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour, in 3 hours they're already going outside of the exosphere. I mean into the exosphere, outside of the thermosphere and into the exosphere. And at this point right here, even with the website from NASA themselves, it says here, like everything else burns, rocket fuel cannot burn without oxygen because it operates when the air is too thin. It provides enough oxygen. A rocket carries its own oxygen tanks and mixes it with the fuel just before it is burned. Now we all know that planes, commercial aircraft, do not have rockets on them like jets or jet fighters. Now there would be no air in this area coming out here, and it will completely throw the airplane just crazy. It will just start falling towards the earth. There'll be a lot of stalling. It'll just fall down. And a lot of people don't know how planes work, and they claim to be experts in airplanes, but this is why I had to make this presentation. Now I'm going to take a linear dimension here, and I'm going to show you just how much curvature we're dealing with in just a few hours of flying. Now you can see after the 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour, 4 hour trip, it's going to be about 708 miles drop of curvature that the plane would have to be nosediving down to compensate for, because if the plane flew in a straight line, keeping level like they do with the gyroscope, with the the artificial horizon, the attitude meter, if they do not curve down, they will go straight into space. Now, I'm going to zoom in here, and I'm also going to do the linear dimension for verification purposes of the 500 and the 1000. Oops. There's 1000. There's 1500. Okay, now there's our verification of the measurements, and that is 2,250 like we predicted before we did all this. I brought it down just to make this presentation. So there it is, 500, 1000, 1500, and 2250. And the drop at the first hour is 38 miles. The second hour is 134 miles. The third is 301 miles. And the fourth, of course, is 708, like I showed you earlier. The thing that goes on with the discussions and people who present themselves as experts in aircraft have really never been inside a cockpit before, or vice versa. They just never even flown a plane either. Now, what happens is these arguments that are presented, I mean, they give us some crazy ideas, and they give us some crazy false data that that gravity has a big play with this. And really, they say things like that there's a gravity gauge on the airplane cockpit, that there's also a curvature gauge on a airplane cockpit. Now, a lot of people have never really even been inside of a cockpit, and they just state that there is. I mean, what happens here is that there's an attitude indicator, which is the artificial horizon and the gyroscope that maintains the plane level, and there's also the altimeter right here, and they're really close together on this cockpit because these two things are the ones that maintain the plane level to the ground. And right here we can see, I could state all these vocally, that there's a transponder, there's a course deviation indicator, fuel gauge, RPM indicator, throttle, propeller, mixture, manifold, trim. I mean, I'm going through these fuel sector, directional, the fuel pump switch. I mean, there's so many on here, and you can see that, make it a little bit bigger, there is no such thing as a gravity gauge, and there is no such thing as a curvature gauge. When people say this to me, I think they are crazy. I really do. Now, when I come back here and I show you how this works, is that the altimeter, it goes, it keeps the altitude of the aircraft. It shows that it's always maintaining that altitude. And then you have the attitude indicator, which is a artificial horizon. And here is another website that explains it, theendurancecorner.com, instrument training, that the attitude indicator is also known as a artificial horizon. It depicts the plane's attitude, whether it's banked, climbing, descending, or level. And I made a diagram to make it a little bit more clearer, because there's a lot of the diagrams and everything that I'm showing, it's kind of hard to keep up on all of it at the same time, so I just made one simple one that would have all these in there. Now the attitude indicator is the artificial horizon level. It has a gyro compass inside of this little gauge. You can see here that this here maintains itself level with the aircraft. For instance, this artificial horizon here moves when the plane rolls, or it pitches or anything. If you don't understand the terminology that I'm using, here it is. Here's the perpendicular axis as a yaw. So if you're looking at it from overhead, it's turning left to right and it's not moving up or down. Then we have the pitch, which is up and down from the nose, and then we have the roll. And if we see here this image, this airplane is rolling to the left and the gyro compass moves with it. Now, another thing that I want to show is that there is effects of high altitude in these planes, but the cabins are actually made to have the same pressure as a 8,000 foot flight. But the thing is, the problem with going in a straight line and not compensating for the curve would be really, really disastrous if they went into the exosphere. Now, we have to understand that everybody has been in school. Everybody talking about this stuff has been in school about the ball earth, and that this is the drawing and this is how it is. But I can tell you from experience that planes do not compensate for the curvature. And there's a lot of things and a lot of ways to prove this. I mean, even in the training programs for flying a plane, do not use a curved ball earth. Now, I'm going to show you one. There's various simulators that you practice flights on, and one of them is Microsoft Flight Simulator. There's a few others. There's X-Plane 10. There's, like I said, there's a few others. And what I want to get to here is the map, and also the way they are. I want to start with the terrain mesh geometry, the whole computer program of the whole thing, is that they actually make the textures to do the mountains and everything, but the algorithm, if you don't know what algorithm means, is to solve the problem, an equation to solve the problem. And so this mesh triangulation, which actually stands for RQT, it was here earlier. Is restricted quad tree triangulation. Sorry, it was right in front of me. But the restricted quad tree triangulation, or RQT, it generates the seamless mesh whose complexity depends upon the roughness of the terrain. So what this is saying here is just explaining how the 3D program makes mountains and textures and stuff like that. But the RQT algorithm, the restricted quad tree triangulation, as published for the video game, for the simulation, is really intended for flat earth terrain, where the sea level elevation reference is assumed to be an infinite plane. So in order to make their programs work, they had to make the earth flat, because that's how it is in real life. They cannot make it on a ball earth. And over here, when you scroll down, they go into some equations of how they state that you have to think that you're on a ball, but they give you a really strange explanation here, because I'm in IT and I'm reading it and I'm just like, what does what does this have to do with not being able to make it a ball? Because with a 3D program, you can make anything. You can do anything with a 3D program. But because this is a simulation for real life, they're not making it into a ball. So here it is, folks. The equations must evaluate 64-bit floating points and prevent loss of position. The 7 significant dishes of 32-bit floats, and they represent the point door meter accuracy, since the rendering pipeline Direct3D in this case uses 32-bit floats. Now, I'm reading that, and to me, it's just complete baloney. Direct3D using 32-bit or 64-bit memory has nothing to do with not being able to make the world a ball. The 32-bit and 64-bit are actually just the differentiate of if you can use a 64-bit operating system or a 32-bit operating system that can handle, 32-bit processors with an operating system can only handle 4 gigs of RAM. And 64-bit operating systems can handle more than 4 gigs of RAM and are able to process faster and things like that. It has nothing to do with not being able to make a ball. Like I said, you can make anything with a video game. And here we have a terrain local origin, which is telling you this is the terrain of the triangular mesh. It's intended for flat Earth, and it has a perfect 90-degree angle. And then it wants to tell you that it has a camera looking down somewhat. If you've ever done a simulation, or if you've ever seen anything, even on a video game, they don't compensate for the curve, even for training for the airplane flights. Now, I'm laughing because, this is right here in your face. It's insane. Now let me take some time here to recap, because there's a lot of information that I went through. I don't know if I covered everything. I hope I didn't. But yeah, the thing is, not too many people are able to think this through very well. They honestly believe that they are flying level, and then they have a little globe on the side like, hey, remember, you're on a ball. It's really, really cynical. Now, I can take this diagram here, this presentation, and that, there's about quite a few airplane flight pilots out there. If you've never looked at it, there was in February in Seeger, in Flyer magazine, February 2015, there are approximately 100,000 commercial pilots. Now imagine the ones that are not commercial. There's over 100,000 commercial pilots. That's 1,000 or 130,000 commercial pilots, of which 4,000 females are part of that. That's pretty. That's a 32-to-1 ratio. Ladies, you got to step it up. You can't be thinking that you can take selfies all day on Instagram and have a life. Step it up, ladies. I'm sorry. I'm seeing this, and it's pretty funny. Alright, as you can see, I had to stop the video there for a minute, but where was I? I was talking about the distance here. So, well, I gotta say that there's various ways to put this to the test. I could do it myself, but I don't have a plane right now in my presence. But in the question of any kind of science or any kind of debate or discussion, and even in the authority of over 1,000 professors or mainstream scientists or even pilots right now, the authority of thousands of them is not worth the humble reasoning of just one individual. And all this people have to do is just put this diagram to the test. But I already have, and I already know this. I don't need to do it. I'm just putting this out there now. And do not brush it away like, oh, this is silly. This is an insult to my intelligence. Blah blah blah. Hey, I was there a long time ago. You cannot deny this. It's one of those things that this is not something that's degrading your intelligence. This is something you got to say, hey, I'm going to put this guy down. I'm going to shut all these guys up. I'm going to shut all these flat earthers up. That's all you got to do. And say, I'm going to do it. And it's really not hard to do it, supposedly. But we can see here that this is not going away anytime soon. And when we do a Google search, we have about 62 million results on the date of January 13th, 2016. So we have thousands and thousands of people who can actually put this to the test and say, I'm going to shut this guy up, or I'm going to shut everybody up, and I'm going to show them that we do compensate for the curve, and you will have to do it the right way. You will have to do it without an autopilot. Do it with the autopilot. Travel 30 miles without autopilot and see what happens. Does the altitude change? And we can see here that 500 miles, that's it. And like I said, it just takes a few people to take this to the test and do it. It's not that hard. I mean everybody is making fun of everybody right now. It's saying, oh, look, the flat earthers are stupid. This guy's dumb. He doesn't know anything about airplanes. Prove it. It's a challenge.
We don't have time for a meeting of the Flat Earth Society. We don't have time. We don't have time. We don't have time. We don't have time for a meeting of the Flat Earth Society.
Another thing that I want to bring to attention is that I don't know if anybody has ever looked at the ball Earth in space. And this is real time. There's the world we're supposed to be living on, and then we have Australia right here. I mean, this ball Earth belief makes you believe that when you arrive in Australia, it looks something like this. Look at it. Does that make any sense? Does that make any sense when you have a cockpit doing a horizontal, artificial horizontal horizon, and the altimeter that are monitoring the aircraft's movements the whole time, but you fly to Australia and you're believing that you do this. It's pretty crazy, isn't it? Alright, I hope that is it for today, I guess. I don't know, maybe if I can think of anything. I mean, this would actually be the thing that's happening if that is completely true. I mean, it's hilarious. I used to believe this, but the discussions are open. The comments will be available to present any kind of proofs. I mean, I don't deny anybody, so please come in here and present that this here is wrong, and keep the insults to a minimum. There's no need to offend everybody. I mean, You have people that believe in Bigfoot and Nibiru and all this other crazy stuff, but if you tell people that the Earth is not a ball, people will literally try to kill you. It's pretty funny. But there you have it. Show somebody, present it to somebody, and I'm gonna go get some coffee right now because I'm gonna need it. Take care. Everyone. I'm going to take the time to make this presentation about how aircrafts flying on a ball is pretty crazy. We have a few people who have already made some diagrams, and I'm just going to come in here and show how these diagrams match and how it is practically impossible to have it be a ball. Now, I'm going to use AutoCAD again, and everybody's going to be able to follow through with this because it's a program and I do everything live. Now, a lot of people say that I'm using PowerPoint and it's a presentation, and that is completely not. 49 miles plus that to get the 59 miles, sorry about that, to get the distance. Whoops, gotta get the calculator first. Plus, and to verify, 249, about 250 miles. 4208. Now you can see that is not above the thermosphere here. It's about this area here. It's still within the thermosphere. Now I'm going to change this red. The flight path of the ISS is plus 311 miles. So it'll be 4270. 4270. That represents this line here. I'm going to change the color of this one first. Change it to blue. Cyan to represent the ball Earth. And this one I'm going to change to, I don't know, yellow. Let's just do yellow. And to verify that, we have the 500. This represents the ground to the end of the thermosphere. Now, another thing that I want to take into account is another aircraft vessel that is up there is the International Space Station. We can put this in there too to get an idea of how high that is up there. And I'm going to take 3,950 kilometers to 500. There's various. They don't have any kind of actual agreement on what it is. They just put it on there, and I'm going to use this because it is on a government website. Now, I'm going to convert these in order to get the ozone layer's distance from the thermosphere to the exosphere. I'm going to take my calculator and I'm going to put in, I was working on something else, hold on. That's 500 kilometers, and in miles that's 310 miles. 300.7, let's just do 311 miles. Now, in order to show that here, I'm going to make another circle. Oops. With the radius of, let's take the calculator here, 3959. True. Please learn the difference between a PowerPoint presentation and a live recording. This is a live recording. You can even see the minutes. The minutes move up. It just moved up right now. Now, let's go over here and back to the Earth radius, verifying that with Google and NASA information that it is 3,959 miles. So let's go over here and make an Earth with the radius 3959. Zoom out because the thing is pretty huge. There we go. Took a while. Now, what I'm also going to do is I'm going to come over here to the Australian government with the atmosphere theme report. I am going to look at what they have here for data, because where the exosphere starts and the thermosphere ends really depends on who's making the diagram. So it changes, from 550